Hi folks, I'm Alan Watt and this is Cutting Through the Matrix on the 15th of June 2012. For newcomers, help yourself to the website cuttingthroughthematrix.com. There's lots of audios for free download there where you'll start to understand the big system you're born into and how we're managed basically by professionals. Old sciences, of course, sciences that go back thousands of years, and how to manage populations and even empires. So there's nothing new under the sun, except they have more technology now and a quicker ability to find out what the public's pretty well thinking on a daily, in fact, an instantaneous basis in real time. So you find out where they're going with it, why they're going this way too, and what the big agenda is, because it's a eugenics agenda where those at the top decided a long time ago that they got to the top by being the fittest and the best, the brightest, and the better bred. And it's time in a post-industrial, post-consumer society, post-democratic society to start bringing in the new world order. That's what it is. It's also called the age of transitions. And it's got a few other names as well, but they need hope to bring in eventually their new city-states around the year 2050 or thereabouts, where they'll phase away countries altogether, and the more important people with all their technologists and so on that will keep all these cities afloat will rule the world, or at least rule themselves in their own city-states and the world with it, what's left of it. And in the meantime, their big problem is culling off the general population, quietly and humanely, of course. They'll never admit it to you. All the signs and symptoms have always been around you, but they never admit it to you. They can't, because you have to do something about it if they did. And that will never happen. So help yourself to the audiences. Say, remember too, you're the audience that bring me to you. You can buy the books and discs at cuttingthroughthematrix.com. And you can donate as well if you go into cuttingthroughthematrix.com. Remember, all those sites listed on the com site have audios and transcripts as well for print up. And you can go into Alan Watt Sentinel.eu for transcripts in other languages. So that's how you can do it. Now, from the US to Canada, you can use a personal check or an international postal money order from the post office. You can send cash or you can use PayPal. And across the world, you're left with Western Union, MoneyGram, and PayPal once again. And straight donations are really, really welcome. Believe you me. Now, the age of transitions is part of it. When the big experiment comes to this juncture where we're at today, where they're joining whole countries together in blocks. An idea floated by Marx initially, and then taken up by the Royal Institute of International Affairs when it came into fruition. And of course, you find other organizations preceded the name Royal Institute of International Affairs. You had the Milner Group, Cecil Rhodes Foundation, and various other ones that came together to form this big block, with the bankers, of course, all working with it. I'm not talking about bankers, the guys that you deposit with. I'm talking about the international guys with their private banks who basically float whole nations or sink them, as the case may be. So it's an incredible plan for those who are completely unaware of it. We think you're taught to believe you're floating along and bad things just happen every day, and politicians just try and fix the problems like a leaky boat. You just stick corks in it. That's the impression you're supposed to get from the mainstream media, which is owned by the bankers. But nothing is further from the truth. Your whole life, and the whole last century too, literally we were living through a script with far-reaching plans where so many different aspects of society had to be completely destroyed or altered that it would be unrecognizable looking back on it, how people lived that way, these old-fashioned ideas that they had. That's been accomplished in the last 100 years. Back with more after this break. Hi folks, I'm back, cutting through the matrix, talking about this big system of change. And of course it's planned change, and I've mentioned so many times over many years, that you simply look back at the Soviet system, look back at the United Nations system, and at the present too. They've got 5, 10, 50, 100-year plans all to do with different aspects of altering society, culture, and the world in general. And that's how the world is run. Even big corporations plan their investments that way too, and their takeovers years and years ahead because it's all to do with strategy, you see. And the world's run the same way. Now, most folks, as I say, think they're born into a system that's just floating along, and big accidents happen, and politicians just jump into action, if you want to call it jumping, and crawl into action maybe, and try to solve the problems, but nothing, as it says, further from the truth, nothing at all. Because you can find in the old books written by the big players, especially those who are associated with any United Nations organizations in a global structure and level, you'll find in their own biographies the whole plan for the world, the planned society. Go back to the Fabian Society and listen to their speeches and read their speeches and what they planned too. They wanted to bring in this planned, organized society where the better people, the intelligentsia who'd proven their stuff by getting a lot of cash over centuries, slaughtering other people and marrying other people who also came from families that slaughtered other people and accumulated wealth. In other words, the fittest to survive, the better types of psychopaths. And they would organize how everyone else should live. And they even debated too what was the purpose of all of the rest of the public. They came to the decision that man was no different than any other herd of animals. And of course, they're the good shepherds, you're the sheep, and you feed the shepherds. That's your purpose. Literally, all the old ideas of Christendom were scrutinized and tossed out the window a long, long time ago by those who decided that they preferred Darwin's ideas. And it's been that way ever since. And it certainly does make you think. You know, like Nietzsche says, when God is dead, how do you think? How will you view society and yourself if God is dead and all those rules are out the window? Then that's mankind's rules then. And man is always out for power, so the powerful will always grab and be the new rulers. That's the world in which we really, really live. And of course, science came to the fore. Darwin helped kick it off. Marx added to it. In fact, Marx wanted to dedicate, I think, his third or fourth edition to Darwin because he thought that Darwinism proved this supposed science of communism, etc., and all the ideas that Marx was putting forward. And again, too, communism was not a rebellion of the workers for anything at all and freedom. It was really just a takeover of a system by another group of people with the pretense of using science to control and monopolize society and use society for the benefit of all, of course. It's always for the greater good. So it never had honesty, you see, in government. And government's not about honesty, it's about secrecy. So many departments are involved in nefarious things that they don't want you to know about, that they will actually put the Official Secrets Act on many of the goings-on at the present time. And they'll lift them maybe in 50 years' time when most of the folk are dead or don't care. And that's how government has been for an awful many, many years, for well over a century. Now, we're going into the authoritarian stage, as I say. We're in the authoritarian stage that was predicted by the Club of Rome, who came up with the ideas of post-democracy back in the 1970s. They said that we'd have to use authoritarian societies and authoritarian governments to rule society in a more efficient manner. All this squabbling between different groups, which they knew would happen because you see that the United Nations make sure that they've created thousands of conflicting parties that will always squabble to give the impression that you can't do it any other way. You have to go under an authoritarian system who just, overcomes all of that and just gives the orders or all obey or else. And that's what we're in now. Even the article I gave out the other day there to do with Ban Ki-moon, saying that we're basically going into austerity, and he wants forced labor camps to work for the environment and all this. This was all tried in the communist system. Everybody supposedly would spend so many years as a student working in the fields and all that nonsense, except for the special ones who ruled the country, because it wasn't in their job description, you might say. And something else besides. But anyway, it says here, Canadians are threatened with jobs for criticizing the government. This is happening across the world now. I've got quite a few articles like this, and it says, Parks Canada employees across the country have received letters warning they're not allowed to criticize the agency or the federal government. The directive comes as the agency cuts hundreds of jobs or curtails work hours. This is, I'm aware that during this time of significant transition, again that transition again, the concept of loyalty can have a very particular meaning. However, as employees of the public sector, our duty is to support the elected government employees, we're told. So it goes on, of course, and on and on and on. But no doubt they'll probably privatize them all down the road anyway, or bring in Blackwater to look after the forest and slaughter anybody who fancies going for a walk, perhaps. Because that's the way the world is going. We're all being privatized. Private corporations are to rule the world. They already do, in a sense. They already do. They put politicians in. It's so funny, all this nonsense about anybody can be president or prime minister. You see the money you got to get even started to run for office. And you've got to have the okays of the Council on Foreign Relations and all their bodies. They're the guys who decide. Because all the big corporate members are also members of the CFR. And if they don't want to just even notice you, you won't be noticed. You won't get a mention in any paper at all. So it's all a con game. But they've got to use this idea of voting and democracy. Otherwise, you'd have to rebel every 4 or 5 years. And they don't want that, of course. It works awfully, awfully well. Now, China is the model state for the world. According to the United Nations, it's said it many, many times. It's got many different aspects that the United Nations thinks are just wonderful, a very compliant population. You can work them 12 hours, 14 hours a day, all ages, doesn't matter what age they are. You can lock them in factories too if you want. And they're awfully obedient. They don't rebel at all. That's what they want everywhere across the world. But also that they only have one child per family unless you're wealthy. Because they have a class system in this communist nation, you know. It's communist still, you know. But a class system. They've always had a class system in this so-called communist system. If you're part of the Politburo class, the middle classes, etc., then you can pay a certain fee and have a second child. But all the masses of the public can't afford that kind of fee, and they're not given permission anyway. Now it says Chinese authorities confirmed Thursday that a woman was forced to abort 7 months into her pregnancy. That's what they do there. They come and get you from your home. Several days after her plight came to light when images of her baby's corpse were posted online. I've got the articles here. I'll put them up too. For those that want to see the photographs, they will. They dumped the baby next to her. They killed, of course, and dumped it next to her. That's the medical care in China. Rights groups have blamed authorities in North China's Jiangxi province for forcing Fen Zhenmi to abort her pregnancy because she failed to pay a hefty fine for exceeding China's strict one-child population control policy. The Jiangxi provincial government said in a statement that a preliminary probe had confirmed the case was basically true, and the investigators have recommended action be taken against the perpetrators. This has always been going on. And it will continue to be. They've always been doing this kind of stuff. So I'll put these articles up. But this is the country that the United Nations wants us all to follow. They like this idea of government agencies and commissars all down to the local level that just bark orders at the public, and the peasants, you know, bow down and all that grovel. And they will like that stuff. They do. And that's what they want you to do as well. In fact, they're a bit miffed that you don't at the moment. But it'll come. That's what they actually want. Now, this article here gets me going because it's about Scotland and what they give them in schools for their lunches. It's a cold dinner, basically, at £2 a shot. But anyway, this little girl got ticked off with it and put a blog up and photographed the different lunches that came along with kind of score graph and 1 to 10 on what she thought of them. And I'll put this up for you to decide yourself what you think. And of course the school came down like a ton of bricks because she's exposing what they're getting fed at school and what, of course, the wonderful nutritional staff decide is good for you. And it wouldn't keep a mouse alive when you're growing, believe you me. But I'll put this one up tonight too. Plus the craziness in society to do with the end product of narcissism. Remember Bertrand Russell and Julian Huxley said that they would create this narcissistic society. where people were hedonistic towards the end part. Then they wouldn't care what else they were doing in the world, the big changes. They wouldn't care what was happening as long as they were wrapped in their own little world, doing their own thing to themselves or for themselves and so on. And they go crazy with cosmetics and plastic surgery, and they try to stay young forever in the big cities. And the older women get so much poop out on themselves trying to compete with the young women. And it's madness. You can't win that way. It's against nature. And you can't believe me, you cannot beat nature. Anyway, a mother of two spent $15,000 on her butt injections, it says here. It lifts the lid on the secret world of black market cosmetic procedures. And she's written a book on it because now she's kind of anchored to her chair with a rather heavy weight there to do it because of her addiction. But this shows you how farcical it all becomes. And it's all promoted through television, through music television and all the rest of it until it's grotesque. Because people are going insane, folks. They're going crazy all over the place. Look at all the so-called bath salts. Craziness that's going on. Another woman shot and killed her taser to death because she was trying to strangle her own child, and then she strangled the dog, and then she was attacking neighbors and punching them out, and the nude too, you know. And this is happening all over the place now. People are going nuts. Absolutely nuts. Because reality is too morbid for them and too serious and too scary for them to survive. They prefer going into insanity than being sane, especially at the bottom of the heap, and there's no hope. You'll see an awful lot more of this kind of stuff. And I'll come back with another story of madness after these messages. Hi folks, I'm Alan Watt. We're cutting through the matrix, talking about the madness that's breaking out all over, because it's time for it, you see, as people go round the bend. Mind you, they've all been poisoned, shot to eat rotten food that's full of poisons too, and toxins at the bottom level, which is actually from the middle to the bottom level. And the fact they've been pumped through full of so many inoculations their whole lives, you're seeing the product today, and the doctors certainly do, although they keep their mouths shut. And so do those involved in specific surgeries. They understand what's happening to the human condition because we're an absolute mess, as it was intended to be. Cancers are absolutely just skyrocketing. They keep going up and up. But there's no crisis because, you see, it's planned that way. If it wasn't, there would be a crisis. And because the big boys would have to know what's happening to their animals. After all, they feed on us, you see. And at the same time, too, they're going ahead with their neuroengineering, and this article is about neuroengineering and neuroscience. They want to dominate your minds, remember. And MIT, that have really, they're government funded completely, and every black budget goes through there too, to find ways for creating weaponry or dominating the mind itself. There's an article saying that neuroengineers at MIT have created an implantable fuel cell that generates electricity from the glucose present in your cerebrospinal fluid that flows around your brain and spinal cord. In theory, this fuel cell could eventually drive low-power sensors and computers that decode your brain activity to interface with prosthetic limbs. Well, it's not limbs they're thinking about. They always use that kind of excuse. Believe you me, they never put millions and millions of dollars into helping those who have got problems and physical disabilities. The glucose-powered fuel cell is crafted out of silicone and platinum using standard semiconductor fabrication processes. The platinum acts as a catalyst, stripping electrons from glucose molecules, similar to how aerobic animal cells, such as our own, strip electrons from glucose with enzymes and oxygen. So anyway, now they've got the fuel cell, and they've already got the chip, so it's only a matter of time before they put the two together. If they've not done it already, probably have somewhere. And we'll hear how that works out then. Probably start giving it for people who say, oh, I'm depressed. You know, they're on the streets, no job, no hope of the future. And I'm depressed. So they don't give you a job or help you to work or train. No, they just put a chip in your brain and suddenly you're all happy as you starve to death. That's the intention of the controlled society. And that's what all of that, of course, is really, really for. Now in Britain, it's so mad. I mean, these are things you would see at one time in Monty Python. giving you scenarios of the future. But you couldn't do it. You can't satirize it today because we're beyond satire. We're way beyond satire, what we take for granted today. But a student from Wales, I guess it was a foreign student who had gone to Wales to study, went to London for a little holiday, and his car packed in. It broke down near the Houses of Parliament. So it says here, one poor tourist learned today you risk more than a fine when you park illegally on the city's streets. Anti-terrorist police evacuated Parliament Square and carried out a controlled explosion on Nima Husseini's Razi's dark blue Ford Mondeo after he abandoned it just yards from the House of Commons and Westminster Abbey. It says when Mr. Razi's car broke down in Storey's Gate, he slipped a note on the dashboard explaining, "This car is broken. I'm just waiting for the AA," that's the Automobile Association, "to arrive. Please do not fine. Thank you. Yours sincerely." Well, that might have done okay in the times of the Raj, but not these days. And it says, he then decided to pay a visit to Buckingham Palace, just a 5-minute stroll away. And it says, when Mr. Razi, who was an MBA student at University of Wales, visiting London for 24 hours, returned from his sightseeing trip, he found swarms of police officers scouring the remains of his mangled car. They blew it up. To add insult to injury, a traffic warden arrived on the scene and issued him a ticket for parking after being alerted by the police. So that's your big ha-ha. That's how Britain does all these stories, like ha-ha. That's your typical kind of story. I mean, that's madness. This is madness, you see. And they don't know who owned the car and all the rest of it because they have instant ID checks in your plates, etc., etc. And never mind all the cameras you're already on when you park, especially in places like that. So they just blow it up now, and then they hand you a parking ticket, and that's that. I'm surprised they didn't haul him in too and torture him. But that's the way it goes. Now, Google, Amazon are leading the rush for the new web domain suffixes, it says here, in bids to ICANN. Amazon users are staking claims to large swaths of the internet under a new system for labeling web domains, bolstering their ability to control traffic as the web expands beyond the realms of .com, .gov, and .org. The bids by those companies to acquire new domain names such as book, shop, and movie renewed fears amongst competitors that a powerful few will dominate the internet marketplace of the future. Well, they already do. A slate of roughly 2,000 new web suffixes, including app and sex, was revealed Wednesday by the non-profit organization tasked with regulating domain names, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, ICANN. It's amazing too, that just came out of nowhere by itself, like a non-profit organization that assigns you all your names and numbers for everybody across the world. The group announced last year that it would take applications for new domain names to foster growth and competition online. The new domains are scheduled to go into effect next year. So it's a new era of online innovation, said Rod Beckstrom, president of the group known as ICANN. And I'll put this link up too. Now, another one too is the Rothschilds just opened one of their private banks in Texas, USA. Back with more after this.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Because you can handle the truth.
Hi folks, we're back cutting through the matrix, talking about Rothschilds and the Bank of England and all that stuff. It says, be more competitive and make more money. It's an ad put out by ENG Lending, which is a division of the Bank of England. And it says an FDIC chartered bank. It says expanding its mortgage operations in Texas. Our loan officers are provided a number of unique benefits. And they go through all the benefits for them because they want winners and all the rest of it. Tells you where they can, they're opening up offices across other places too and lending to other states as well. So I'll put this link up for you to let you see how The old enemies at one point are now well in there. They always were well in with the other banks that they have that are well known as well, actually, with different names. They've never actually been out of it, in fact. Now, the BBC says this, that Brussels plans a European banking union from 2013, next year. That was the point of all this hyper stuff, and to amalgamate all the laws under the centralized bureau in Brussels, and to give more power to Brussels, and to allow again the IMF to come in and to start doing every country's books for them. I said that years ago, and here it comes. That was create the crisis, and here's the real solution for it all. Always the same tricks, isn't it? Brussels plans European Banking Union from 2013. And it says, European Commission President Jose Manuel Barroso supports rapid implementation of the plan. And it says a single regulator to oversee banks across all 27 European Union nations that is, could be in place as early as 2013. A controversial new bank bailout fund financed by a tax on financial institutions is also planned. And we're all in it together. One goes under, and the rest you bail them out. Just great for the banks. They never lose a darn thing now, you see. The proposal includes an EU-wide deposit guarantee scheme to protect savers in the event of a bank collapse. And the UK said it would not sign up to a full banking union, suggesting it should only be for Eurozone members. The BBC understands a timeline table for the plan will be agreed at a European Council meeting on the 28th and 29th of June in Brussels. The Commission President Jose Manuel Barroso supports rapid implementation of the plan, with initial provisions such as common bank supervision being introduced as early as January 2013. So, this is a Commission spokesman was keen to point out that talks between Barroso and the other presidents of the European Council, Eurogroup and European Central Bank were in the early stages at the moment, that is. So they want to, as I said a long time ago, want to come into the countries and take over all the fiscal agreements and arrangements and managing of all the so-called nation states involved. Exactly what the Royal Institute of International Affairs wanted a long, long time ago when they set up the IMF and the World Bank and the Bank for International Settlements. It's all going exactly as they planned and outlined 100 years ago. Isn't that something, eh? But they need all this crisis to make it happen. And this article here too is to do with applications for your iPhones. It says, you can get iStalk.me software. I guess if you're narcissistic and you like yourself so much, you can actually get, download software. I'll put links up tonight so you can actually stalk yourself and find out where you've been all this time. And have fun with that, if that's what turns you on. I think people get turned on with awfully strange things these days, but that's what they say, you know. Everybody's got their own thing. This other application is going to be great for stalkers, though. It says, New Girls Around Me iPhone app helps you stalk women. Girls Around Me scans for women who have checked in on Foursquare so you can find her and tell her you found her on the internet. And that's by Travis Andrews. I'll put this one up as well. Remember that came out before that Foursquare one. We're responsible for another application. This must be an updated version. It says the app is made by a Russian company called SMS Services. And it says there's a good chance the app may not be around too much longer since Foursquare has taken action against it. Must be cutting on their turf. You know how it's totally cool and normal and appropriate to just show up somewhere because you know there's a girl there at that very moment who you think is cute, even if she doesn't happen to know you exist. Oh, wait, I think that's called stalking, and it's the premise behind the new iPhone app, Girls Around Me. The creepiest app I've personally ever heard of. Girls Around Me scans for women who've checked in on Foursquare. Once it finds ladies who don't know you are a human being or that you even exist in the area, it offers you their Facebook profiles so you can have a whole lot to talk about when you show up where she is because you saw her picture on the internet. It should be noted the only connection between the app's users and the women is that they both use the internet. Stanford Law lecturer Elizabeth Stark says this would be a very different application if it didn't link back to Facebook, which is a treasure trove of information. With that link, this app could easily be a Let's Stalk Women application, or vice versa for that matter, because everyone's nuts. The app's made by a Russian company called the SMS services. And it says, Foursquare spokesman Laura Covington says that this is a violation of our API policy, so we've reached out to the developer and shut off their API access. Regardless, one can still buy the app from the iTunes store. As much backlash as the app has seen, it does point out that the inherent danger of posting your location on the internet. Information is information. Once it's in a public place, it can be used in whatever way people choose. And I guess that's true, if they're actually choosing or getting prompted by their hidden masters. Also tonight I'm putting up an article. It's quite interesting actually, and it's by the Council on Foreign Relations, and it's to do with the US and Israel's kind of partnership. It's a kind of it's a piece put out to sort of damage control, you might say, because so much going on right now. But what is this special relationship that the US has with Israel? And no one wants to say, except, well, it's been there for a while, and it's nice, and all that kind of fuzzy stuff, but nothing concrete. I mean, is it a treaty? What is it? So they come out with this piece. Brzezinski's on it, Kissinger's on it, I think, and they give their points of view, etc. And it's all a lovely-dovey stuff. Why the US should keep floating and financing Israel, and I still can't find anything concrete on it. Also, the abnormal returns from the common stock investments of members of the U.S. House of Representatives. I'll put that once again because it's got quite interesting stuff about the House of Representatives and how they're using insider trading. And mind you, they passed a law recently to say that they could do that themselves, but it's not for the general public. They passed it because they're all getting caught at it. That's why they passed it. It's quite something. What a world we live in, eh? What a world. Now this article is pretty good too. It's to do with drones. It says here, as the US and its allies ponder what to do about Syria, one suggestion advanced by the protagonist of armed intervention is to use unmanned drones to attack Syrian government targets. The proposal is a measure of the extraordinary success of the White House, CIA and Defense Department in selling the drone as a wonder weapon despite all the evidence to the contrary. The attraction of the drone for President Obama and his administration 5 months before the presidential election is self-evident. The revelation that he personally selects targets from the top ranks of Al-Qaeda, which is nothing at all, it's a meaningless name, for assassination by remote control shows the president as tough and unrelenting in destroying America's enemies. The program is popular at home because the cost appears to be large and not to be large, and most importantly, there are no American casualties. The media uncritically buys into claims of the weapon's effectiveness, conveniently diverting voters' attention from the US's Army's failure to defeat any puny opponents and two vastly expensive campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Republicans cried foul, alleging that the administration is selectively leaking highly classified secrets to portray Obama as a man of decision, untroubled by liberal qualms in his defense of his country. And the White House they expressed themselves deeply shocked by such a claim of political opportunism. And last week, the U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder appointed two lawyers, she just said liars, to track down the leakers, though without giving them special powers to do so. Almost unquestioned in all this is the utility of the drone strikes and where they really are a wonder weapon that they're claimed to be. After all, air forces have been overselling precision bombing as a way of winning wars on the cheap since Lord Trenchard ran the Royal Air Force in the 1920s. Politicians of all nations have been attracted by new war-winning armaments or commando-type organizations. Examples include Churchill in the Second World War and President Kennedy, who favored the Green Beret special units and helicopter-borne forces in Vietnam. The media has traditionally gobbled up and publicized tales of magically effective arms or the daring do of elite detachments, often ignoring their lack of long-term military success. The most striking but underestimated feature of the drone strikes in the northwest frontier districts of Pakistan is that they could not take place without the cooperation of the Pakistani army and its all-powerful military intelligence branch, the ISI. Some government cooperation is essential in Yemen too, though less so than in Pakistan because of the weakness of the Yemeni state. The problem is that high-precision weapons still need ground-based intelligence to identify targets. In Pakistan, the ISI says privately that its agents provide the details without which the drones would not know whom to pursue and eliminate. The difficulty for those guiding the drones from command posts far away has not changed much since precision bombing in the Second World War or far more accurate missile strikes in Iraq in 91 and 2003. So in other words, it goes into the fact that there's more PR and nonsense, positive nonsense put out about it for perception's sake, for the general public to think this is a magic weapon. And it isn't at all. It kills an awful lot of innocent people, as many articles have come out recently, in fact constantly saying to us. But it doesn't really matter. Most folk don't care who's getting killed as long as it's not them. What an awful world we live in when that's how people think, eh? Because that's how people really do think. Well, I'm not getting killed. Hasn't killed anybody I know. And the big eating machine of the world order is coming round to your doorsteps, mind you. And eventually they will be killing, because I've got articles here to do from the British papers about the American drones. There's over 60 bases already set up in the United States to deal with drones at this moment. They already have that set up within the US, and they're expanding at one awful speed. And soon we'll be known, but the Pakistanis have been known for years, that when your children start getting killed, and for those who still care about their own children, they'll be howling in the streets. And now, this article here is quite good too. It says, busted biotech leader Syngenta, that's biologically GM corn, or GE corn as they call it, charged over covering up animal deaths from GM corn. Well, they've always known it kills animals, including man. But it says, the leader Syngenta charged over covering up animals' deaths. They were covering up animal deaths from the law, from GM corn, and they're riveting victory against genetically modified creations. A major biotech company known as Syngenta has been criminally charged for denying knowledge that its GM BT corn actually kills livestock. What's more is not only did the company deny this fact, but they did so in a civil court case that ended back in 2007. The charges were finally issued after a long legal struggle against the megacore initiated by a German farmer named Gottfried Glockner, whose dairy cattle died after eating the BT toxin and coming down with a mysterious illness. Grown on his own farm from 1997 to 2002, the cows on the farm were all being fed exclusively on Syngenta's BT 176 corn by the year 2000. It was around this time that the mysterious illnesses began to emerge amongst the cattle population. Syngenta paid Glockner €40,000 in an effort to silence the farmer. However, a civil lawsuit was brought upon the company. Amazingly, 2 cows ate genetically modified maize, which is now banned in Poland over this similar concerns, and died. So, the maize is killing them as well. During the civil lawsuit, however, Syngenta refused to admit that its GM corn was responsible. In fact, they went so far as to claim having no knowledge whatsoever of harm. The case was dismissed, and Glockner, the farmer who launched the suit, was left thousands of euros in debt. And that's not all. Glockner continued to lose many cows as a result of Syngenta's modified BT corn. After halting the use of GM feed in 2002, Glockner attempted a full investigation with the Robert Koch Institute and Syngenta involved. The data of this investigation is still unavailable to the public, and they only examined one cow during the whole trial. In 2009, however, Glockner teamed up with a German action group, and it says, and they ultimately brought Syngenta to the criminal court. Using the testimony of another farmer whose cows died after eating the product, Glockner and the team have charged a biotech giant for the death of over 65 cows, withholding knowledge of the death link and holding the competition liable for not registering the cattle deaths. The team is even charging Hans-Theo Jamann, the German head of Syngenta, personally over the withholding of knowledge. So that's the first one to actually win, and I hope a whole lot come soon too. Remember, the people are getting this stuff too. Apart from that, it's getting into the cattle. It's the food chain. Then you eat it. No wonder folk are dropping dead all over the place with strokes and things. And they really are, folks. When you talk to people who are in that business of harvesting organs, they'll tell you that's one of the biggest things I've got going. Young people dropping dead of strokes, not on drugs or anything else. And there's no inquiry as to why. It's a non-crisis. A few years ago, I mentioned about the big agenda. The big agenda, remember, too, was to destroy especially the systems of Britain and the US and a few other countries. And certain people from certain organizations were brought in at the end of World War II, given the full power by presidents and prime ministers to start destroying the culture in case it ever went fascist. That was the excuse it was given. And primarily to the Labour Party, this was entrusted. I mentioned this article a few years ago. It was talking about Tony Blair and Jack Straw, who came out eventually. They were found out that they opened the doors wide to immigration, and actually said in other articles, which I have here, I might put up tonight too, that their plan was to destroy the British culture so much and so devastatingly they couldn't ever come back to what it was. It would be finished forever. So this article goes back and it says, dishonest Blair and Straw are accused of a secret plan for multicultural UK. Now they achieved their plan, and it's done. Britain's done as far as that goes. So this is from Friday the 15th, 2012. June the 15th, that's for tomorrow. This is their paper just come out sort of thing. But what I'm saying is, it first came out in 2009 with a similar article. And I remember one is the right-hand man of Tony Blair came out and he mentioned it too. And he says he was ordered to do this to destroy the culture of the country once and for all. That was the whole purpose of it. I'll put this link up for those who want to read it and save it too, because these kind of articles are just disappearing. They don't last long. They disappear and never be seen again. And you can tell people down the road what happened, like you're trying to tell them history, but if you have no evidence to show them, they won't believe you. They simply won't believe you, folks. Now, here's the music coming in, and I'll be back with more after this break. Hi folks, I'm back, cutting through the matrix. And just to finish off, I'll go back to this drone thing, because it says US military operates 66 bases for an unmanned drone aircraft on American soil. That's the military, right? There's more with the cops too. And has 22 more planned across the country. It says a new map released by Public Intelligence, a non-profit group dedicated to publishing public government data, reveals the ever-growing footprint of the Department of Defense's newest weapon. The bases span the entire country. 33 states either have a base already or are slated to have one pretty soon. The existence of a base doesn't necessarily mean drones are stationed there, but Wired magazine reports some bases are remote cockpits where soldiers fly the unmanned craft in the skies over Yemen and Afghanistan. Well, they know where they are already. They've been out for years. Others are training facilities for prospective drone pilots. Others serve as depots where servicemen analyze data the remote-controlled spy planes bring back. The bases mostly house the smaller drones like the RQ-7 Shadow, RQ-11 Raven, and the Wasp-3, which is a wingspan of less than 2.5 feet. 6 of the bases are home to the larger Predator and Reaper drove, which can carry missiles. Public Intelligence coupled together its map of military bases from a host of public documents, including a 2011 U.S. Air Force presentation on the subject. Despite how extensive the list is, it might not even be complete, the group's Michael Haynes told Wired. It's very likely there are more domestic drone activities not included in the map, but is designed to provide an approximate overview of the widespread nature of Department of Defense activities throughout the United States. The list also doesn't include any domestic agencies that are using drones. That's true. There's so many agencies now, eh? They're all falling over into each other's territories and having little wars amongst themselves as well for power. This is in April that the Electronic Frontier Foundation, another advocacy group, released a list of universities, local police departments, and federal departments that have received permits to fly drones in the United States. The military is prohibited from using the drones to spy on Americans in the U.S. However, Wired reports that if the Air Force accidentally records Americans while spy drones are making training flights, it can keep the surveillance footage for up to 90 days and use it as intelligence data. So yes, they can spy on you. And that's just the military branch of it too. So we're living in what was once pushed out as Sci-fi, science fiction. Science fiction actually prepared you for all of this. You saw this kind of future with a small elites, with all the black-clad uniformed troops, the kind of Star Wars type troops that would be keeping people living in rubble and always attacking them and so on. That's a common theme out of countless science fiction novels and movies. And here we are. It's coming down the pike. You're not quite in the rubble yet. Some folk are actually that have lost everything, or they've been plundered by the banks. But there's more rubble to come, obviously. And there's more crashes to come. You understand, you're not going to go back to the way things were. I hope you really understand that. And I've talked to so many people who have had nervous breakdowns over that concept. They can't let go of some 1970s or 1980s or even 90s version of how America used to be before the bank crashes demolished everyone. And remember, the agenda is not to go back there anyway, because we're now to go into the age of austerity. Austerity means every penny that you should spend on little things that kept you happy, gave you some kind of worth after slogging a month in a plant or a factory or whatever you did. You rewarded yourself. Well, you won't be able to do that shortly, because it must go back in energy taxes and all the rest of it. Tonight I'm also putting up one from Australia, a video on the laws, the gag laws now, that you can't say certain things on television. You're forbidden to speak on certain things. I'll put that up tonight. Very interesting talk on this video. From Hamish and from Ansela from Canada, Ontario, Canada. It's good night. May your God or your gods go with you.